History is too often dominated by empires. Nations that control vast tracts of land, are inhabited by millions or even billions of people, and manage an incomprehensible amount of wealth and resources. It's impossible to fully wrap your head around the operation of a state this large, and this is often why countries like the US and Russia have a difficult time managing themselves as efficiently as smaller countries. So, in this video, we'll be talking about city-states, and how these tiny nations have managed to gain great wealth and power throughout history, as well as some of the unique solutions they have employed to solve monumental problems. Let's begin with ancient Greece, and its best-known city-state, Athens. The Greek peninsula is very mountainous, which made travel challenging. This made it difficult for cities to invade one another, and so Athens was more or less able to grow without fear of invasion. But the mountains also made it very difficult to produce enough food to sustain a city. So Athens turned to the sea, colonizing foreign lands to provide itself with food. The naval supremacy of the Athenians also famously allowed them to evacuate the entire city when the Persians invaded, and subsequently win the Battle of Salamis. Athens' biggest exports were philosophy and democracy. Being a hub of education and learning, Athens was home to some of the most well-known philosophers of all time, the works of whom are still hugely influential in modern philosophy and science. It's also worth noting that without the success of Athens, the famous works of ancient Greek writers such as Plato's Republic and the Odyssey would likely have been lost to history. Athens is also known as the birthplace of democracy, but Athenian democracy was not at all like what we use today. For one, women and slaves could not vote, so only around 10 to 20% of its inhabitants could actually participate, but those who could vote didn't have a representative in some congress or parliament because Athens was not a representative democracy. It was a direct democracy, meaning citizens voted on every law and issue presented, and all of them were able to debate before a vote was held. The next city-state I will talk about is the Republic of Venice, also known as the Serenissima Repubblica, or Serene Republic, a name which I think is well earned considering it was able to survive for over 1,000 years. Like Athens, it was well known for its naval prowess, mass-producing ships on a scale seen nowhere else in Europe at the time. But unlike Athens, it mostly used these ships for trade, not war, becoming one of the richest nations in the world. Also like Athens, Venice was designed out of geographical necessity. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire, the Italian peninsula became susceptible to constant invasion through the Po Valley. So the people living in the area at the time decided to build a town several miles off the coast, which eventually became what we recognize as Venice. As I mentioned earlier, Venice was not a warmongering city. In fact, with few exceptions, Venice was on good terms with most everyone, and gained a reputation as a city of peace and diplomacy. The final city-state I will talk about in this video is Singapore, which is a relatively young nation, only becoming independent in 1965. But in the short time since its founding, Singapore has proven itself to be very creative in solving problems. Being less than 300 square miles in size, it has been forced to micromanage its land use. Today, 80% of Singapore's residents live in affordable public housing, which has been designed to save space while also providing adequate recreational areas for residents. Much like Venice, Singapore has become a leader in diplomacy and trade. Despite the growing tensions between the United States and China, Singapore has managed to maintain strong relationships with both of them, and also famously hosted the meeting between the leaders of China and Taiwan in 2015. On top of being really interesting and important for understanding history, city-states also serve as a very useful microcosm of larger nations, allowing us to better understand the inner workings of a country without the staggering complexity of larger states. And as a person who really enjoys looking at maps, it's very cool to be able to visualize an entire country on such a small scale.